Hello, my name is Ben Ehrenberger, and I am a digital solution consultant that is directly aligned to our IT asset management solutions here at ServiceNow. And in this video, I'm going to cover some of the differences between the core asset management, which is what you get with the base platform, versus what you'll have with hardware asset management. So when you become a ServiceNow customer, there's a few basic functionalities and capabilities that you get out of the box, and those are including asset and model records, having the ability to keep simple stockroom and mobile capabilities, as well as foundational purchase order and contract management. So, outside of the basic functionalities of asset management baked into the platform, we also offer a wide array of different areas for you to improve your asset management practices, whether that's within hardware asset management as a whole, which we will begin to discuss later in this video. That also includes your software asset management, your cloud resource management, along with your enterprise assets that you might have in your organization. So, when we're discussing asset management as a whole, the asset management core is a great way for you to be able to get that basic functionality within ServiceNow. Let's take a look at what this looks like in the platform. All right. So, for customers that are not entitled to hardware asset management or software asset management, when you go into your ServiceNow instance, all you have to do is search in your all menu and search the word asset, and you'll get a few different key items within here that will give you the ability to go to a few different areas. The first place that I like to go to is this asset overview page. This is where you're going to get some very nice out of the box reporting about different things like your different licenses, your different configuration items by your different manufacturers. Things like your different computer OSs, your computer manufacturers, pretty simple reporting, but very powerful. And to continue that conversation within this view under portfolios, you're going to have a few different areas you can go. The first of that being all assets. That's going to be all of your different assets that you have in ServiceNow. Again, when bringing these assets in, a lot of the times the processes are going to be fairly manual, but that's expected as it comes with the platform as a whole. But it gives you the ability to get some insights into what are my consumable assets, what are my different hardware assets, my different license assets, any other assets that I might have, along with things like, hey, my software entitlements. What are my licenses looking like in that realm? Right. So just to start this, I'm going to pop open the hardware table. And within this table, we're going to look at all of our different assets that we have in our environment. So that might include, different laptops, different network gear, different servers, desktops, things along those lines. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop open a record here. And what we're going to find is that we're going to get information about the asset, along with things like, hey, what's the display name, what's the model for this, what's the configuration item that it's tied to back in the CMDB, and then we're going to get some other good information around who is this asset assigned to, what's the current state, serial number, location. All of these fields are available for you to populate, along with the different other assets that are tied to this asset. So that's going to be some of your consumable models, like maybe it's a wireless mouse, a keyboard, a monitor, things along those lines. But we also give you the ability to track a lot of other information tied to this asset as well. So that's going to be things like your financial information tied to this asset, any disposal information if this asset is going to be retired, depreciation information, along with contracts, any entitlements that are surrounding this asset, along with the different activities in the activity stream that goes along with this asset. When coming back to the hardware table, I did want to point out that when we have our users assigned to a specific asset, When we open up their user record, what we're giving you the ability to do is to find that there's different assets tied to the user record. And this makes it so it's easy for you to understand, hey, which users actually have what assets, right? Does it make sense that one person has 4 laptops? Probably not, right? So being able to track that information, at ease at your fingertips. So coming back into your all menu here, I'm going to pop open what our consumable assets are. And those are going to be things along the lines of your mice, your keyboards, and those different assets that are maybe not as much high in value monetarily, but it's nice to be able to track and manage that from a business perspective. Additionally, if we were to go in and search for the word stock, what we're given the ability to do is find those different stock rooms that you guys might have within your organization, right? We have that ability to go and create new different stock rooms. And what I'll do is I'll pop open an example of a stock room or a warehouse just to show you guys what this field might look like. Right. And within here, we have, the ability to fill in different information, right? It's going to be, hey, is there a manager for this warehouse? Who is it assigned to? What's the location? Is it a specific type of warehouse and or inventory? If there is a manager, if you wanted to put in specific latitude, longitude locations, right? And then we get to understand, hey, what do we actually have living at this warehouse? Well, we currently have a lot of assets that are in stock, things like your computers, your printers, and having that visibility into there, right? We also have this tabbed out so that you can view those different consumable assets that are living in this warehouse. Also, if there was different software licenses or any other assets tied back to this stockroom, you would have that visibility into this right here. So within stock rules, we're giving you the ability here to create different rules to be put in place so that when an inventory of a specific asset is getting low, you're able to set thresholds to be able to say, hey, there's only 5 left of this asset. Maybe we want to restock that asset for this warehouse. And what it's going to do is it's going to automatically kick off a request for that vendor to order 10 more of those assets. And this is just an example, but these can be for any of your different assets that you have currently in place. And you guys can, make the different order sizes and thresholds unique to the specific asset. So something that I hinted at a little bit earlier was the ability for you guys to be able to track and maintain those different licenses that are tied to your assets. So within the assets view, what I'm going to do is I'm going to group all of these by model just so that I can see what type of assets I actually have in my environment, right? So we're able to see that we have different business services, computers, consumables, different hardware, monitors. And what I wanted to touch on quickly was the ability to be able to track your software licenses. Although this would be a fairly manual process for your asset management teams to manage, it is nice to be able to have that visibility into what you guys have going on in tracking from an asset perspective when it comes to software, right? We can understand, what's the display name? Who is this software license actually assigned to? If you guys in your organizations have sub organizations, sub companies, you can have this to say, hey, this person works for this company. We know what the state is of this asset, what's the cost of this specific software license, as well as if it tied back to any configuration items. The next view that we're going to be taking a look at is our ServiceNow mobile agent application. And this is where you're going to be able to perform some basic asset practices from a mobile device.
So upon opening the mobile agent app, there's a few capabilities that you get out of the box. And one of those is our procurement modules within the application. And when we open up the procurement module, what we'll find are a list of the different POs that are due to be received within the next 30 days. And you can see from different vendors, Lenovo, Apple, Amazon. And for this example, I'll just pop open an example of a pending delivery that we have from Apple. We can see that there's details around when this was requested, when we ordered this, alongside the activity stream, which is going to give us that ability to attach any images or take pictures and jot down. But when we pop over to our PO line items, what we'll find is that we can see the different line items tied to this PO. And when we are looking at these two different devices, we can swipe to the right and find that we can receive these assets by going in and using your phone's native functionalities with its camera to go in and actually scan those assets to pull in that asset tag and serial number information so that you can go ahead to submit for review. So after receiving the green confirmation message, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go back to the main screen so we can show how we actually are creating an asset record when we are doing this process. And when doing so, we can use the asset lookup function within the app to be able to, again, scan a barcode to see that that asset has then been created within ServiceNow. When we look at this record now, we can see that there's a location tied to this new asset that we have created, along with the state of in stock. We know that it's available. And when we go and check out the activity stream, we can see what changes have been made to the asset along its life cycle. So currently we see that the asset has been received through the purchase order, which is the process we just walked through. So now that we've walked through what you are entitled to when having the ServiceNow platform in terms of asset management at its core capabilities, let's now take a look at some of the capabilities that you are getting with Hardware Asset Management Pro on the ServiceNow platform. So when looking at and comparing asset management with Hardware Asset Management Pro, at a feature function level, there's a lot that HAM adds to the equation, and the big piece of that is going to be hardware normalization. But please feel free to pause this video and look through all of the different capabilities we have within hardware asset management. So before jumping into a demo of how hardware asset management works on the Now platform, I wanted to quickly go through how this actually works from a process perspective. And the first step of this is going to be, making sense of that different discovered hardware data. And that discovered data can come from various sources. It can come from your discovery tools, procurement systems, even from spreadsheets as well. And what hardware asset management is doing is it's absorbing all of that data, and then our machine learning normalization will be combing through and filling in the gaps to correct those different fields for assets where maybe the manufacturer name or the product or the model are inconsistent. So for any of those outliers, our ServiceNow content service team will be researching and updating our ITAM content library to be able to push out all those updates for our customers. And this clean data can now be leveraged across all of your different teams throughout the organization. But at the end of the day, the reduced manual processes within HAM is the biggest differentiator across the board. So when discussing hardware asset management with our customers, we find a common thread of outcomes, and that's going to be have the ability of cost takeout, increased operational efficiency, having reduced outage rates with risk mitigation, along with a greater end user experience. And with that, that's resulting in a lot of reduced manual practices, increased improvement in efficiencies, and making sure that there's reduction in outages, caused by hardware issues. We'll now pop over to the hardware asset management demo within the ServiceNow instance. So when you open up the hardware asset management application within ServiceNow, you'll be greeted with the hardware asset overview. And the hardware asset overview is there to show you a few different important actions and quick links. Also, you get that ability to have that 360-degree view of your entire asset estate to be able to have a snapshot for those assets by different model type, life cycle state, as well as asset values as well. The next area that we'll take a look at is the Asset Analytics tab, which is where you'll be able to get an understanding of how you can manage your resources efficiently by tracking the total cost of ownership for your assets. Within here, we have an out-of-the-box dashboard for you to be able to understand your assets that have reached their TCO benchmark, things like capital planning, as well as these specifically comparative reports between different assets. As we pop open this report, what we're going to see is real-time data on the total cost of ownership specifically for these two different assets, the Alienware M16 versus M14, and giving us that ability to send a benchmark as well. It's also important to note that all of the dashboards in today's demo are actually all living, breathing data that's sitting behind these. So you can drill down into any of these different figures, and you can actually go in and pull open the individual asset records that are driving these numbers and visuals. So within this example, we can see also that we have asset lifecycle events that are also being tied back to the specific asset itself. Alongside that, with its asset total cost of ownership on the side here as well, to be seeing things like contracts, labor, the parts purchase, maintenance, all of that being tracked into its total cost of ownership for your assets. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is our inventory view. And within the inventory view, this is going to be the area for you to be able to view all the different details surrounding your different assets, inventories, and stock rooms that really enable you to perform all of those different asset tasks. So firstly, within stock rooms, what we'll see is that ability to build out different stock rooms. And within these individual stock rooms, you're going to be able to find things like the different hardware orders that you have against it, the shipments, the transfer orders. And alongside the right here, we have our stock rules. And those are going to be in place for you to be able to automatically kick off orders for your different hardware items. We also have the hardware tab where you're going to be able to find things like the asset itself, what state it's in, the cost, the configuration item it's getting tied back to, alongside the function of that asset. So whether it's a primary asset, a loaner asset, and we're going to take a look at loaner assets here. These are going to be your dedicated loaner pool for this specific inventory. So you can set aside assets that are dedicated to be loaner assets. Additionally, we have our pallets, which is you're able to track multiple different assets that are tied back to a pallet record that are living in a specific space in your inventory so that we can see and track all of that at a greater level. And when coming back to our inventory view as a whole, we're going to see that we have those built out workflows for you to be able to do asset auditing, as well as asset disposals and being able to track those assets through their entire life cycle all the way to disposal, as well as being able to manage those loaner assets as a whole, as well as things like RMA orders, RMA line items, transfer orders, as well as donation orders. The next area that we're going to take a look at is our hardware asset estate view. And within this view, we're going to be able to find things like different asset functions and maintenance to be able to keep track of our different assets as well as our consumable records. Within this view, there's a lot of great out-of-the-box reporting capabilities for things like your hardware warranties expiration, contracts that are up this year, as well as specifically tying back incidents to your assets. So within here, we can pop open a record for a Lenovo ThinkPad, and what we'll see is that we're tying back those incidents from an ITSM perspective back to the asset itself so that we can get an better understanding of how we can best service our assets. So coming back up to the top here, what we'll see is that we get the ability to look at our entire asset estate from all of our different types of assets. We also have specifically set out things for your hardware assets so you can get visibility into those assets, such as the asset tag, serial number, who it's assigned to, the state, as well as cost and configuration item. We also have built out tabs so you can follow your different consumable assets, your bundled assets, any palleted assets, other assets, as well as those asset tasks. But what we're going to take a look at now is our asset indoor mapping feature that is new within Vancouver. And that's going to really give you the ability to get that insight into where your assets actually are at an inventory level. So that at any point we could go in and click on one of these rooms and say, hey, what do we want to know about what is actually living in this location, right? We can see that now there's an Apple MacBook, there's a mouse and a keyboard living within this space in the inventory. The next area that we're going to take a look at is our model management view, which is really that view so that you can have that insight into the details around those different types of models that are being managed across your different hardware, software, consumable, and bundles. Within here, we'll be able to understand things like our end of life dates, when our consumable end of life dates are, as well as any missing data and normalization metrics. But to get more of a granular view, we're going to pop open the All Models area, which is where you're going to be able to find all of your different models of assets that you guys have in your estate, as well as your hardware models, so that you can understand all of those different hardware models and the data surrounding those. And this, again, applies to our consumable models as well, but is also giving you that ability to bundle assets together. And a common example that I often go over with customers is a standard employee onboarding bundle. Right when a new employee is onboarding to your organization, they're going to need a few key things. That's going to be mainly a laptop, and sometimes you want to put additional things in there, right? A monitor, a keyboard, a mouse, things that are pretty standard with onboarding a new employee, so that you can bundle those together. And last but not least, we have our contract models. And this is going to be different models for your different insurance, lease, maintenance, NDA, and any other type of contract that you deal with regarding your different assets. So next, we're going to move over to the content lookup portal for hardware asset management. And this is really where you can view all of that data related to different hardware products stored in ServiceNow's hardware asset management content service. So the next area we're going to take a look at is our procurement view, and this is where you can really view and manage all of the different details going around for those different procurement activities. So this dashboard helps to point out some of those key pieces of information like expenditure by vendor, orders by vendor, requests in the last 30 days, requests that require sourcing, open purchase orders. But what we're going to take a look at now is this ability to have visibility into your different requests, whether they're approved, pending approval, who they were opened by, who it's requested for, as well as those purchase orders that are being tracked and managed in ServiceNow throughout its lifecycle. Being able to understand the different costs that are associated to that, as well as when we receive this asset, being able to track those receiving slips, so we actually know that we've received a specific asset. We're now going to pop over to contract management so that we can understand and view all of our different hardware and software contracts, so that it's going to pull information like contract expenditure by type, by the vendor, what are those expiring contracts that are coming up, as well as being able to filter out what type of contract it specifically is, so we can get that visibility into all of our contracts. But if we wanted to look at this from a specific type of contract level, we could see our leases, insurance, maintenance, subscriptions, as well as our terms and conditions that are tied to these contracts. So moving forward here, we're going to go take a look at the success portal for hardware asset management, which is where you're going to be able to track the progress of your hardware asset management application with success goals. And what you're going to be able to do is assign different activities to track the success of your goals and mature your HAM process with predefined maturity items. So what we can see is that we're currently in that crawl stage, which has going to be things like setting up your stock rooms, those hardware models, and we can actually drill into these individually to be able to see the details around this specific task. We also have that ability to drill into our different stages here, so we can see that there's going to be different activities for our walk stage versus our run stage. So last but not least, we're going to pop open our asset operations, which is where you can view all the different asset operations related to your inventory, shipment, procurement, hardware asset normalization, contracts, zero touch refresh, as well as success goals. So you can see that we have different carrier integrations for our shipping. We have those different hardware asset normalization tasks, as well as your contract renewal information, asset, total cost of ownership configuration, zero touch refresh, as well as the hardware asset success. When specifically talking about zero touch refresh, what we're looking at is that ability to fulfill different employee hardware refresh requests through an external vendor without having to maintain those new assets in your local stockrooms. So that is going to wrap up our demo portion for today, but I'd like you to consider what your next steps are in your hardware asset management journey, right? What are those next steps? Where do we go? From our side, we always recommend setting up some time to go over your different ham practices, business goals as a whole, and then being able to identify any implementation needs or barriers. And finally, pulling together the right team of experts and partners to help combine those efforts in optimizing your practices. So, with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. I hope you learned a lot in today's session and have a great rest of your day.